Ladies and gentlemen, join me for a New Year's Eve special on The Sofa with Esther. Joining me would be Asia KuyKendall from Atlanta, who will be talking about quantum wealth, bridging the gap between generations for financial empowerment and legacy wealth. Okay, well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are across the globe. Welcome to On the Sofa with Esther. Now, today with me, I've got a very powerful young lady. I met her when I was in Atlanta a few weeks ago, and I thought, oh, she's got an interesting conversation that needs to be had. And it's interesting because I've connected with Asia twice, verbally like this. And every time I've connected with her, I've needed to share something about my process that leads into what she's going to be talking to us about. And so this conversation is going to help you yourselves on so many levels. It's about wealth creation, but it's about the consciousness behind wealth creation and the mindset behind wealth creation. And
Yes.
there's a little bit more than we realize around this. So welcome, Asia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this. And if it's okay, we can jump right into a conversation because
Absolutely.
the way you just introduced it, it clicked for me in a new way. Because as the curriculum, the quantum wealth theory, that's the framework that I've discovered that talks about the mindset and the wealth mentality. And so a part of what goes into that and makes this curriculum different from other financial education is it largely focuses in on the neuroscience, the behavioral psychology, and the quantum physics, which is the energy around money. Because, oftentimes I feel like we separate the spiritual conversation from the scientific conversation. So what your introduction reminded me of is what I realized is called the reticular activating system, RAS. And that's the part of our brain. I think in our phone call, I kind of talked about it a little bit, but that's the part of our brain that's responsible for filtering in all the data that we take in. Because at any given second, between our five senses, we're like bringing in millions of bits of data.
Yeah.
This RAS, reticular activating system, is responsible for filtering that data to determine whether it's relevant to us or not. That's why certain things you miss, you don't pay attention. But if it's relevant, then it'll pay attention to it and then further decide if it aligns with your current beliefs, your current subconscious beliefs, or goes against them. And if it aligns with it, then it's perfect. It'll keep operating as normal. But if it goes against it, it either rejects that belief or you'll go through another process. You have to feel a certain way about it, feel like it's true, feel like that is where you want to go when your brain aligns with it. And eventually you do that enough times, it'll convert that into your subconscious beliefs. Now that's the function of the system. But what you said that reminded me of it, an example you've probably heard before, how they say, oh, if you start shopping for a new car, like a red Volkswagen, you never see them until you start shopping for it. All of a sudden, you start seeing a bunch of red Volkswagens. And that's because that RAS system, once you put something into that process of, okay, it doesn't go with what I see, but from now I'm going to be on the lookout for it. So now your brain seeks to prove what you're presenting to it. And that's what that Volkswagen comes in. And your introduction, how you were saying, when we talk, that's the energetic alignment, I feel like, because you've presented that to your brain. And so now it's going out to search for proof or denial of what you've presented.
And why I'm loving this conversation is that, as you know, I'm in the States and I've been on this incredible adventure and journey over the past almost 2 months now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that coming to the States was to obviously showcase my body of work and to, source opportunities. But also I've had to, be mindful of my relationship and association with money. And then I remember when we spoke a few weeks ago, we were talking about that it doesn't just show up as money, but in terms of opportunities, they call it serendipity. You know,
Mm.
those serendipitous moments when things just align and things happen. So it may be there's some sort of alignment in terms of meeting someone out of the blue and there's an opportunity there, or they remind you of something, or there's something beyond just the meeting. There's something more substantial than just what it's showing up to be, and
Yes.
recognizing that. And as part of our conversation, we spoke about sometimes when we're needing something as well, and it just shows up. So you may need somewhere to sleep, you may need something to eat, and somebody shows up or something shows up where we are presented with what we need. And so can you
Mm.
therefore expand on that? And then we're going to come back to how that also relates to money and abundance as a whole.
Yes, yes, yes. Man, because what you're describing as the ability to recognize opportunities and value that may not necessarily have a dollar amount attached, there's a caveat to that because you understand what you want out of life. Essentially, you've identified a goal, you know what you're working towards, and so because you've identified that, then you can recognize some of those alternate opportunities when it comes.
Yes.
Because what I've learned, and especially we talking about the conscious community, if we just want to call it that for now, very um literally that implies that you're conscious and paying attention, you're questioning, you're reflecting, and you're having those conversations, if not with yourself, with other people. But you might or may not be surprised to know how many people in the general public, the masses, who don't question what they want, what they believe, what they're working towards. And matter of fact, when they're trying to make more money, they don't even know why they want to make more money. They just maybe feel like my experience is stretched, and if I make more money, then that'll make that better. But without having identified exactly why you want to make more money, for what your ultimate purpose or goal is in life, not just to work for the weekends, for the cash, to live, that's a very key, that is the key cornerstone of this process. Because in the quantum wealth theory, we describe it as the North Star vision. That's
Mm-hmm.
5 years into the future, knowing exactly how you want your lifestyle to look like, not putting money to it yet, but just painting that picture so that you can recognize some of those alternate solutions when they come up, because it may not be a dollar attached to it. When you recognize what you want, it could be right in your face.
And I love the word value because that's a word that's used quite a lot. I realize in the States, what is
Mm.
the value of, understanding the value of,
Yes,
and
yes.
then because when you understand the value of something, then it may show up as a physical form as something small. But then
Mm.
if you
Mm.
recognize the value of that,
Yes, yes, yes,
then
yes,
it's bigger than the tangible, what you're seeing.
yes,
And that goes back to what you talk
yes,
about in terms of being aware of things that show up in your space that then can evolve into
yes,
something bigger and different and more expansive, but
yes,
also recognizing, I'm loving this conversation,
yes.
but also recognizing that if I step into this, and sometimes you're stepping in without knowing, but you just know you need to step in and put one foot forward, then believing, I don't know if the word is believing, trusting, opening up to the doors of opportunity, opening up to wherever you feel you want to go. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yes. And I want to add to that, because we need to make sure we clarify that when we talk about values, just like everybody's fingerprints are unique, everybody will have their own unique values. And I
Mm.
think that's what makes it tricky, because especially in America, the coined American dream tells us there are certain metrics to success. And, if you haven't thought for yourself whether those metrics illustrate the type of success and lifestyle that you want, then you're working towards these that may not align with what you truly value in life. And
Yes.
so what you're saying about value, and it may be small, and believing that there's open doors for it, it's first of all being confident to know that what you recognize as value and valuable, others may not see it in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the great conversation. And that's why they often say, if you've got a dream and you're working towards something, then you don't expect other people to believe in it. You have to believe in it,
Ooh.
make it happen. And then sometimes other people can buy into it. And
Yeah,
once again, that word value has come up so many times in these types of conversations. Like I
yeah,
had the conversation with my business partner in the UK this morning. He talked about, people seeing the value of what you've got and then they will buy into it. So it's about building relationships and
mm,
then buying into the value of what you bring. And
yeah.
you and it's interesting you talk about the blueprint of that, our individual blueprints are all different. And
Hmm.
you also talked about being confident, having the confidence to follow through with your own.
Yes, because you may not see validation outside of your own feelings. That first of all, you may even have a hard time putting words to it, much less, figuring out what steps to take to get you there. And I want to go back to what you were saying. You said a conversation with your business partner about value, the value you have to offer.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we can even fork this into two different conversations because, with quantum wealth, how we originally start, that's more like my personal goals, personal outlook, what I desire as an individual. But naturally, when you talk about the sovereignty aspect of it, ideally that looks like you have a business where you're able to generate the income, the dollars, or the fuel that's going to fuel this lifestyle that you've personally identified. And so when you say your business partner mentioned about customers seeing your value, this is some of the work I've been doing with some branding. But really, when you're talking about customers seeing the value, the only thing customers and consumers care about is what's in it for them. And so it's, if you can properly explain what you offer and how your services are going to solve the problem that they have, give
Mhm.
them the outcome in their life that they want, then they'll pay whatever for that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that I'm constantly mindful and tweaking for myself.
Mhm.
And also, I think more so with that value, I was talking about people working with you, partnerships, when I talked about the value
Mm.
from that perspective. Um, because
Okay.
I mean, I use myself as the guinea pig because I can only speak about my own experience, and yes, some of what I see,
Mm.
but this whole thing also of monitoring in a way what you're thinking. And you mentioned
Mm.
feeling at the beginning. What are you feeling? Because a couple of times I've caught myself and it's almost like, oh, you're feeling this way today. Why are you feeling that way? And it doesn't mean that you have to be anal about it, but for me, it's about the awareness of it because we're human beings. For the most part, I am always on the go. And yeah, but sometimes I get my moments and then it's almost like, oh, so why are you feeling that way? And sometimes it just means stop. Just
Mhm.
stop, Esther. Just stop. Just stop. It's okay to
Mm.
stop.
Mm. Mhm.
And then you can assess what you're feeling, and then you can do whatever you need to do, and then you get
Yes.
back on track. And
Yes,
I
yes.
think sometimes in the past I've been because I'm driven. And then, because even like last week, I was supposed to have gone and done some intuitive work at this event.
Mhm.
And when I got back to staying, I had the chairs ready, but then I realized I needed a table and I needed this, blah, blah, blah. And I
Mm.
went anyway. My spirit said, just go anyway.
Yes,
So I
yes.
showed up with the two chairs and I saw how nicely decorated their tables and everything was. And I'm like, you know what? I
Mm.
don't feel like doing this. And I
Mhm.
said to the owner, I said, look, I've only got two. She goes, I think you're being told to just enjoy this. Just don't do. Just be.
Mm. Yes.
Just be.
Yes, yes.
I think that's for me today. Some of the challenges I've had today is almost like Esther, just be. Just
Yes,
it's everything is in an alignment.
yes, yes. And so let's talk about that feeling that we talked about, because again, getting it to the science. And the reason why I bring so much science into it, because that's how I have to learn and um how I best change my own habits. Because somebody can tell me something, at one point they might call it hard-headed at a certain age, but you can tell me something, but until I learn for myself and experience and know why what you're telling me is the truth,
Yes.
then I'm like, okay, I hear you, but it don't hit the same. And so
Yeah.
for me, um I think I shared with you my story, having gone through school for accounting and finance. I had the technical financial literacy, worked corporate, on paper, had that American dream success until it came to Achilles injury that cost me $5,000, where I realized that my behaviors weren't matching up with the financial plans I had in my head. And so because of that experience, I went to answer the question, what am I missing? What are wealthy, the 1% specifically, what are they doing that everybody else is missing? And so for me, I know it wasn't technical knowledge. And so that's how I got into all this science. 'Cause I'm like, why am I behaving this way? I know better, but I'm still doing this in spite of that. It's like there was major, what I now know is cognitive dissonance that was preventing me from following through with the logical plans that my brain put together and even, written out. It's not that it was just in my head. And so I bring that back because the concept is, they call it brain heart coherence.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the Heart Math Institute, they've been doing a lot of studies to recognize how our heart, I'm not going to call it a mini version of the brain, because it's actually more powerful in terms of electric force and magnetic force. Electric sends out frequencies, magnetic pulls. It's 60 times more electric and 5,000 times more magnetic than our brain. But it's a mini brain in the sense that it has neurons and different of the functions, if you will, that send and receive communication. And so when you talk about brain heart coherence, while my brain can come up with a logical plan, this makes rational sense. Sure, I should save 10% and put this here, invest here, and not spend this at this moment, knowing I have these other things lined up that are actually priority to me. I decided these are priority. But sometimes it's that ancient evolutionary forces that make us want to fight or flight, which looks like seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And we'll spin to do that, even if it goes against our logical plan. And so that brain heart coherence, not only does it give us more fuel to get towards our goals because we're using our heart's forces, that's more powerful than our brain to get there, but it also, has other side effects like reduction in stress, more adaptable to change, more cognitive capacity, because you're not out of alignment with what you feel you want and with your planning that you want.
Yeah. And I so get that, because a lot of times I go on how I feel, and it's like that feeling drives you. It drives you. So when I'm off kilter or off balance, I really feel it. And then I can, it's always that, like you said, that head and heart, and also your solar plexus. Because I feel a lot in my,
Okay.
in my solar plexus. That's like my second brain sometimes. It's almost like, oh, because a few years ago something happened, and then my son called me and he gave me some news about something that happened. And I'm like, wow, that's why my stomach was like this. And when
Yes.
he told me, it was quite serious. And I'm like, whoa. And
Yes.
even someone else must have been watching me last week. And she goes, you're very sensitive. I'm an empath, so I'm very sensitive. My gut feels everything, but also I have to protect my gut as well. So sometimes there's
Yeah.
that sort of constant tug of war in terms of, okay, I need not to feel so much there because I know what it can create as well.
Yes.
And then also learning how to release it from there. So over
Yes.
to you. I feel like calling you Dr. Asia.
Okay, so look, you said solar plexus. I can't believe you said that, because this is a new, so I mentioned the second edition. I've added some features that better explain, like I mentioned, the RAS and how we actually develop our subconscious, not just when we were ages 0 to 7, when it was default programmed and everything just became our subconscious belief. But even after that, as adults, we still have the ability to add new programs, because you can't undo the original program. You can just add new programs. And so that's a major addition to the second version. But this is the other piece too. So we talk about, even in this conversation, we've thrown the word subconscious out a few times. But what I realize is I needed to break that down and understand what it is and how is it different from conscious. And so with that, there's two ideas that I'm going to present to you that's going to talk just what you mentioned about. We said brain and heart, but then you brought in the solar plexus. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sigmund Freud had his original I don't know if his original theory, his theory that's popularly referenced as the iceberg theory. You've probably seen images where your consciousness is represented as an iceberg, and 10% that's shown on top of the surface of the water above, that's your conscious mind. 10% of your daily actions, your being, that's your conscious mind. And then the rest of the 90% below is your subconscious. It's below.
Up below. Okay.
So that's one thing. But then even breaking down a little further, what this subconscious is, there's actually the subconscious right below the water. That's like your memories, your past knowledge, things that you could tap into. But then deeper than that, there's the unconscious. And then that's where some of those monkey habits, the trigger, the fight or flight, when you're like, man, I don't know what I was thinking, like when people black out and they, all those things, that's the unconscious. And so between those three levels, you got your conscious mind, your subconscious, which is your memories, emotions. You can tap in, you can see, okay, why am I feeling that? What is that memory? It may not be right there at the conscious, but you can tap in. And then there's that unconscious, that's your urges, your impulses, and stuff like that. So bam. And then I got the Sigmund Freud iceberg theory in there to help understand consciousness. But then I came across this, he's a professor, but he's referencing, I think it's Socrates. Yes, Socrates' philosophy. It's this idea that, so it's like a parable. So there's the man, the logical man. We're going to call that your conscious mind. He can logically think and decide and act. And then there's the monster. That's your unconscious. That's what you can't control. He's going to do whatever, the monster. And then in the middle, he calls it the lion, because the lion is where your courage, your pride is, the thing that drives you to make you want, that you could tap into to actually tame the monster and to match with your conscious desires. And so the idea is the man works to train the lion so that together they can tame the monster.
Monster.
And that solar plexus, that's the lion, is what I'm feeling, like that courage, that right here, that's my gut. Yeah. And that's what you use to tame that impulsive monster that drives all of us ultimately.
Because it's about bringing that balance between, I'm just going to pause this because the phone's just going off, one moment. Okay, so that's really great information about the lion taming the beast and harmonizing with the conscious aspect of who we are. And what would you say? So how would you actually implement something that's going to do that? What is the process, or what's a process that you can suggest, Asia, that would help people to try and bring that balance? I know for me, it's like I said, it's always been like I meditate, or I have to work out. I have to do a workout. I work out, or I have to go for a walk, and sometimes I just put on music and I just have to go really crazy to it to just silence that and put it back in its place.
Yes.
So over to you,
man. And so this is another feature that I'm excited about in the second edition, because although it's a DIY process, I plan to host workshops where I'll walk people through it, but I want to present it to where people can buy the workbook, follow along with the videos, and go through this process for themselves. And so first, we're going to assume that whoever is working on this, they know exactly what their North Star vision is, because without having that identified, then you don't even know if I'm going towards or away from it, or why tame the beast. Maybe I do want to sit and do nothing all weekend and spend my money doing this because I have no other goals to say that I should do otherwise than what I want to do. Because, part of the thing is, we worked hard to earn this money. I deserve it. I have the rights to spend it how I want. And those things are all true. But the idea is this monster wants immediate satisfaction while the man maybe wants more long-term. And so it's, how do you balance between immediate pleasures, needs, wants from future pleasures, needs, wants?
Instant gratification.
Yeah. And so very specifically, so you're right on with the exercise. Like, let's not discount when people talk about your body is the house for your soul, your spirit, all the organs. It's the vessel that we're channeling all of this energy through. So working out 1000% for sure. So without walking through the process of what reprogramming the mindset looks like, affirmations. For me, I record myself in a voice note and I set reminders to listen to myself, because your subconscious recognize your own voice better than any other voice.
Okay.
Aside from sleeping to your own affirmations, YouTube is fine, but let's get specific. Speak out your North Star vision, put it on a voice note, even put some little binaural beats behind it if you want. Get you one of those sleep masks with the Bluetooth speakers on it, sleep to that. Those are things to reprogram. But generally speaking, one of the things that it's so good how this has evolved in the last year, because very simply, the idea of reprogramming our brain, we got to make our brain more susceptible to it in the first place. And so we talk about neuroplasticity, something as simple as writing with your opposite hands or brushing your teeth with your opposite hands. That encourages your brain to process in a different way instead of just doing it on autopilot.
Yes.
Even wiping your butt, like things that you do without thinking, but if you ever did it with the opposite hand, you will feel how weird it is.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's like certain things like that, if you could just practice those, that'll encourage your brain to cross and send different connections that it doesn't send before, which generally makes it more neuroplastic. So when you are listening to your affirmations and all that, it's more susceptible because you're doing the work of just, strengthening those muscles to accept new ideas.
Excellent, because I remember some time ago, I was told, even there's an exercise where you cross over leg to leg, or you can, bend down and you swing your opposite hand to your opposite leg.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and
yes.
and interesting, you talk about
Yes.
using ambidextrous. And I think they call it, isn't it, being ambidextrous? Because sometimes if I'm beating an egg, then I would do it with the next hand. I've always been sort of, because I like to challenge myself. I'm constantly challenging
Same.
myself. And they always say, if you get out the same side of your bed, then try to get out the other side of the bed, because, like you said, you're opening up newer
Yes.
pathways.
Yes, yes.
Um, and so there's lots of different ways that you can, even just talking to, just crossing over like that.
Yes.
Just little things that you can do. And so, ladies and gents, these are really some really great nuggets that you can start to work with and do now. I mean, what I'm going to be doing with Asia, we're going to be doing a 4-part series, because we're coming up to the end of the year, we're coming into the new year. I mean, the new year can start anytime, but I think this is quite pivotal in terms of some of you who are in a really frustrated place. And
Mm.
I use this practice myself, and that's why it's always nice to dip into Asia, because then it gives me some extra tools and tips that I can use and work on it, myself. And so, winding down, Asia, sort of feeding into what we've just spoken about, what else can you share with the audience until part 2,
Yes.
that they can take away and really practice with now? And also, I'm getting the word accountability. How can they be accountable to themselves, or maybe
Mm.
not beat themselves up
Yes.
whilst they're working on this process?
Yes. Yes. So, two answers to that. I'll answer the second one. How can we not beat ourselves up as we go through this process? Please trust and believe that this system is designed to work exactly how it's working. Rockefeller had a quote where he said, "I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers." And so, considering, I'm not sure about in other countries, but for here, largely financial literacy is not mandated curriculum. If our parents didn't learn to teach us in the house, then, at 18, we're told to go figure it out. And then, repeating a cycle for certain people. And so if you find yourself feeling frustrated, and especially if you may be the first generation or the first in your family to be wanting to break out of, these habits, then be easy on yourself, because we're going against the grain here. We're charting new territory. We're in the jungle with the machete, cutting a brand new path. And so sometimes it can get tiring, or it can be testing, I'll say, to have
Right.
to work through this, number one. And then the tips you mentioned about how to be accountable. I wrote down the word conscious, and I love it that you started the conversation with it is about consciousness, because really that's what's the foundation requirement to even be reflecting on yourself, to question your thoughts, question your beliefs, question your feelings, and just at least having that conversation to where you're not just taking in all this input information and believing it's fact without questioning for yourself, does this align with what I truly want, what I truly believe? And so one practice could be, whenever you're getting ready to make a purchase, whether it's in the grocery store and it's, we all need food, but, maybe there's certain things that you maybe not need, or even, online, you're scrolling, you're about to make a purchase, just pause and ask the question, does this align with the goals that I have? And is this going to get me closer to or further away from them?
And there's, I can expand on that, because sometimes also it's about learning to be patient.
Mm.
In the background, the wheels are turning,
Yes,
and
yes.
it's how to learn to be patient as we wait for those things to manifest, whilst knowing, but also feeling that you are in alignment. Because I'm a very feely person, and it
Yes.
doesn't feel right. I've learned to trust my internal sat nav even more, because there's been times when
Mm.
I know I should do something, even like I did it yesterday, and my higher self said, "Why? Why didn't you listen? We told you." Just like,
Mm.
with this, just interviewing you, I was
Mm.
looking at the bar. Now the bar is halfway, the battery's halfway, but my higher self was still saying, "You need to plug it in," and I didn't plug it in, and what happened?
Mm-hmm.
And it bombed out. So even little things, I'm really learning to listen to those
Mm.
little things even more. Um, and I'm looking forward to expanding on the conversation we've had today, so we can chunk, because there's so much in what we've already discussed, and so we can sort of chunk those out and really then expand on them over the next few weeks. Um,
Absolutely.
and
I'm looking forward to it.
so what we're going to do, so just share with people where they can find you, and if they no, right. So where can they find you, Asia?
Yes. So Instagram, I'm working on building my personal following. They say I've gotten some feedback that I need to work on that. So my Instagram is at Asia K.247. And on there, you'll see the link in bio. But essentially, there's a white paper for the quantum wealth theory you could download and join the community. I have a bunch of resources. If you're interested in this kind of conversation, the community has a book and media lounge where I've saved a whole bunch of books, videos, interviews around this topic. Quantum
Nice,
physics, money, psychology, value, is all kind of good stuff in there.
nice. And one last question. Are you a practitioner? I mean, you deliver workshops. So if someone wanted to work with you on a one-to-one, is that something that you offer in terms of if they're struggling with a particular aspect of manifesting?
Hmm. Man, thank you for asking that, because as of right now, I don't have that official one-on-one service. And that's just because between the W-2 and me finishing up the second edition to host workshops, that's my main
Okay.
focus right now. And so it's not like you can find it online, but if you reach out to me and we click well enough, then I'm sure we can figure out something, because just like you and I, got together, I'm open to whatever is meant for me, if you know what I mean.
Okay, brilliant. Well, ladies and gents, I've been talking to Asia K, and we are going to be having many more of these types of conversations, because, like I said, it's not even because it's coming up to Christmas or the New Year, but I feel people are in a place where they need to understand that there's something called hope around the corner. Hope looks like
Hmm.
understanding maybe a different narrative, on just, learning something different,
Mm.
something new that's going to take you to a different place, because everything's changing.
Yes, yes,
Everything's, and we have to go with that change. So thank you so much, and looking forward to our next conversation.
absolutely. Yes. Thank you for having me.
Now it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to the rest of the conversations.
Yes, ma'am.